The first day of spring was uncommonly damp and cool. So dull and gray was the life of the young woman who looked out the window in the early morning and longed. Elizabeth was sitting on the old sofa in the small kitchen, drinking tea that had cooled long ago and finishing a slice of apple pie. Today was her 31st birthday, and this simple breakfast on the kitchen table was all she could afford at the moment. Before she blew out the candle, she concentrated on her wish and whispered the cherished words aloud. I want life in our family to get better. The pie and tea seemed tasteless to the birthday girl. It used to be different, and it wasn't about the type of apples or the cinnamon. Elizabeth was widowed a year ago. Her husband Michael was hit in a crosswalk by a rascal on his way home from work. It was evening, and none of the bystanders remembered the license plate number. Elizabeth learned of the tragedy only in the morning, when she returned from her night shift. With Michael, they were truly happy. The lack of money and eternal debts did not prevent the couple from sincerely loving each other. They had been together since high school. The awkward 3-year-old Michael immediately took a liking to a schoolmate who transferred to them from another school. For her sake, the boy liked to read books, became interested in classical music, made friends with sports. Now it was hard to recognize Michael. Love transformed him. Trying to live up to his sweetheart, the boy began to take part in the social life of the school, carefully preparing homework and staying up late in the library. But that was not how Michael won Elizabeth's heart. Modest and terse guy was always there for her in a difficult moment, and she quickly got used to the fact that he can always be relied upon. Suddenly, she fell in love with this shy young man who on the day of acquaintance could not associate 2 words. After graduating from high school, the young people decided not to part ways and went to the same university together. But here's the problem. Michael could not get the necessary number of points for admission. The young man went into the army. Elizabeth was not frightened by these difficulties, and she was determined to wait for her beloved. A year flew by, and when the young man returned from the army, they got married. 9 months later, they had a strong baby boy whom they named Liam. After a while, Elizabeth had to transfer to a correspondence program, and Michael got a job as a construction worker. At first, everything went smoothly, and the young family had enough money. They even managed to save money. Everything collapsed in an instant when Michael lost his high-paying job. It turned out that his boss was illegally building a housing complex in the city center. What finally threw their family off balance was the news that Elizabeth's mother was seriously ill. Sophie had been diagnosed with cancer, and the woman needed urgent surgery. All the savings of the young family went to her treatment and rehabilitation. They even had to sell the house in the village where the family loved to spend weekends. Fortunately, the surgery helped, and Mom soon recovered. But then a new calamity occurred from which their family could not recover. The sudden death of Michael had shaken Elizabeth emotionally, who did not know how to go on. Along with her husband, her confidence in the future had finally faded. The woman held on only for the sake of her son and her elderly mother, who were always there to support her. And now she was sitting in the kitchen, drinking her tea and thinking about what a worthless life it is. For many people it was a lack of money, career, personal life, and so on. But for Elizabeth, worthlessness consisted of a lack of purpose in life. Her ambition and desire were shattered and broken the day she saw her husband's lifeless face. The woman had hoped to the last that this was a terrible joke, a stupid medical error, and that her Michael was in fact alive. He would, as before, enter the house, pick up his son in his arms, and kiss his wife. A lonely tear rolled down her cheek from the former memories of a once happy life. Now the woman only dreamed of a good life. No, not for herself at all. Liam and her elderly mother were what Elizabeth thought of first. The thought had been firmly rooted in her mind a couple of days before, after her encounter with her classmate. She met Valeria, a former classmate, by chance in the supermarket, where she dropped in for a moment to get milk and fresh raisin muffins for Liam. For a moment she marveled at the woman who was walking toward her. Her confident, calm gait and the clatter of her heels made many men turn around. But the woman didn't seem to notice anyone around her. She was focused on choosing cheese, fruit, and a jar of caviar, sending the products into the basket. Elizabeth didn't immediately recognize the stylishly dressed woman as the mischievous, ridiculous girl she'd shared a desk with all her high school days. No, Valeria wasn't a recognized beauty like Elizabeth, but there was something about her look that attracted men like a magnet. Her hair styled, scarlet lipstick, expensive perfume, gold jewelry, and the latest model of iPhone literally screamed of her solvency. With her perfectly manicured fingers, she scrutinized the label on the expensive champagne and deftly added it to her purchases. Elizabeth became embarrassed by her appearance, the disheveled hair and bruises under her eyes. She hurried past to avoid Valeria's eyes, but accidentally caught the woman with her elbow. "Oh, I'm sorry," Elizabeth apologized as she passed by, praying to all the gods that Valeria didn't recognize her. "Oh, that's all right. It happens," Valeria responded mechanically, but looked closely at the face of the random passerby. She suddenly made a discovery to herself. "Elizabeth, isn't that you? How long has it been since I've seen you? Listen, I'm so glad to see you. Let's go to the cafe and talk. Let's go to the cash register first, because the guard is already looking at us suspiciously," said Valeria hurriedly. She deftly took Elizabeth by the hand and hurried her toward the exit of the supermarket. "Hey, Valeria, you're all talk," laughed Elizabeth heartily, for the first time in a long time. They ordered coffee and pastries for two. Valeria didn't stop talking about herself and her life. It turned out that she had her own business. She helped wealthy people find good servants who would carefully clean the mansion and keep quiet about what was going on behind the walls. She always loved to talk, and Elizabeth loved to listen. That was the secret of their high school friendship. "Why am I talking about myself? Tell me how you are doing. Married? Got kids?" "Oh, I was married, and now I'm a widow. An accident. A year ago, my husband was hit by a car. Now I live with my mother and my son, Liam. He's a bright boy. He's going to go to school this year." "Oh, God, I'm sorry. I didn't know," Valeria apologized hastily. "What about your job?" "I don't have any experience, only cleaning floors," Elizabeth replied sharply. "Floors? That idea," Valeria thought to herself. "Let me help you with a job. I have a customer here. He urgently needs a maid, and as bad luck, all the girls are busy. But I don't even know if I can do it." "Of course you can do it. You've been a horrible cleaner since you were a kid, and he pays a lot of money. And your son is going to go to school this year, and your mother is old, she told me herself. So think it over. A couple of months of work, and you'll be running around beauty salons and buying toys for the child." "Well, Valeria, you're really something. Even a deaf person can be persuaded." "All right, I'll do it," replied Elizabeth, thinking that a good salary wouldn't do her any harm. "Believe me, this job will be like a breath of fresh air for you. It's a pleasure to clean houses like this. There's crystal everywhere, antiques, expensive paintings, and if you try, you'll find a new husband. Just choose a prettier and richer one, so you'll become the mistress of the house." "What are you talking about? I don't even want to look at other men after Michael died." "What a fool! You are young and beautiful. You need to think about yourself too, and your son still needs a father. For a boy, the example of a serious and established in life man is extremely important." "Maybe you're right, but I'm not ready for a relationship yet." "Oh, Elizabeth, Elizabeth, what would you do without me?" "That's okay. We'll get your life back on track." "Valeria, but I have no one to leave my son with. Mom has not been feeling well lately, and it will be hard for her to sit with him. What should I do? Any advice?" "I'll talk to the customer and explain the whole situation. Maybe he'll let you move in with your son." "Valeria, you're great. I'm so grateful to you," exclaimed Elizabeth joyfully, feeling that life was beginning to get better. The next few days of agonizing waiting were the most difficult for the young woman. Not knowing where to put herself or what to do, she rushed from room to room in the apartment. Elizabeth was beginning to think that there was no meeting with her classmate, and Valaria was just a dream. When the phone rang a few days later, Elizabeth rushed to the phone. Her whole life depended on the decision at the other end. Elizabeth, congratulations! You are now officially employed. Pack your bags. You and Liam are moving into Daniel's country house today, and tomorrow morning you start your direct duties. Oh, thank you, Valeria. From our whole family, thank you. Don't thank me, no need. I'm the one who should be thanking you. You're the kind of friend I should be thanking. So don't relax and get ready soon. Daniel doesn't like to wait. But Elizabeth heard nothing, and she was dreaming like a little girl. Hurriedly gathered her things, she whirled around the room and hummed. Elizabeth, it's rather unexpected to see you in such good spirits. Is something wrong? Inquired Elizabeth's mother, genuinely happy for her daughter, who had not smiled once since the day her husband was gone. Mommy, life is getting better. I got a job. Oh, I'm so happy for you, daughter. I can finally see you cheerful. Believe me, Michael wanted you to be happy again. I love your late husband as if he were my own son, but he left us, and it was very painful for me to watch you torment yourself. I'm sorry, Mom. I promise I won't hurt you, Elizabeth agreed, realizing that by prolonging her suffering, she was hurting her family. When a black foreign car pulled up behind Elizabeth and Liam that evening, the young woman felt like Cinderella, who finally got to go to the royal ball. Daniel's country mansion looked like a small medieval castle. The huge park, the small pond, the shady alleys, which must be so pleasant to walk through in fine weather, attracted Elizabeth's attention. The big gray building in which she and her son were to live didn't look creepy or unfriendly at all. The polite and courteous owner of the mansion, a man in his 50s, was already expecting a new housekeeper. The previous maid was no longer able to cope with her duties for health reasons. Upon learning that Elizabeth had a child, the man did not object at all to her moving in with her son. Despite his wealth and success in business, he was extremely unhappy. As a young man, he had lost the woman he loved, with whom he was truly happy. The jealous girlfriends of the woman he loved had slandered him, and his fiancée believed every word they said. But because of his pride, Daniel did not make excuses and proved to her that all those words in his direction were lies. He did not even try to hold on to the woman he loved. Years went by, success and fame quickly came to him, but real, sincere love no longer appeared in his life. Twice he married, but all in vain. Neither of his wives could give the man a long-awaited heir to whom he would pass all his affairs. Disappointed in women, he immersed himself in work, and when he woke up, he realized that he had wasted his best years. He had houses, apartments, bank accounts, but he did not have the most important thing, the big, strong, and friendly family he had dreamed of. Elizabeth and her son immediately settled into his large home. The children's laughter, the stomping of Liam's little feet, and Elizabeth's welcoming smile filled the old mansion with light and warmth. The woman was an excellent cook and spoiled everyone with fragrant baked goods on weekends. In his free time, Daniel was happy to play with the boy, imagining himself as a caring grandfather. He told him interesting stories about his travels, built a toy railroad, and even played the role of a horse, riding the little prankster on his back. From the outside, they looked like a real family, but that was impossible. Elizabeth's mother had always talked about her father being a pilot and crashing in a training exercise. But one incident made Elizabeth doubt the truth of her mother's words. One day, while cleaning the office, the woman found her childhood photo on the desk. There could be no mistake. The picture card showed a little girl with a spiky nose and dressed in a bright yellow dress. But where did her picture come from? She was exhausted thinking about it. As he spoke of his youth, Daniel mentioned a sweetheart named Sophie, whom fate had divorced him from. Was this woman her mother, and Elizabeth his daughter? Her thoughts haunted her, and then the woman decided to invite her mother to the mansion, citing the fact that Liam missed his beloved grandmother. The very next day, Sophie showed up at the house. At that moment, she had no idea what surprise fate was about to give her. Mommy, tell me the whole truth. Who is my father, and is he dead? Elizabeth, why such questions? I've told you 100 times that he was a pilot. But then, what is my picture doing in Daniel's study? Interrupted Elizabeth. Mother, I see you have gone pale. You know that name, don't you? What did you two have in common? Is he really my father? "Daughter, calm down. Since you know everything, I'll tell you the whole truth. Once upon a time, we really were a wonderful couple. But after he cheated on me, we didn't get married. I left him, and then I realized I was pregnant. Out of anger, I wanted to get rid of the baby, but the last minute I changed my mind. Yes, Elizabeth, he's your real father and Liam's grandfather, but he's a scary man, and it's best you never see him again." "Mom, I have only just found my father, and you want to take him away from me?" said Elizabeth in tears. "How could you keep the truth from me? He didn't cheat on you at all. Your girlfriends were jealous of your happiness, so they made up lies about him, and you believed them. It was fate itself that brought us together." "Actually, it wasn't fate," came a man's voice from behind her. "A year ago, I found out that my ex-lover had secretly given birth to my child. All this time, I'd been looking for you, Elizabeth. And believe me, our meeting was no accident. I'm incredibly proud to have such a wonderful daughter and grandchild. And Sophie, I'm so sorry. I really was faithful to you. I was young, stupid, I didn't appreciate my happiness. The years have passed, but I still love you. Maybe we have a chance for happiness after all, even though we are no longer young, but we have many beautiful moments ahead." "Darling, how silly you and I have been. And I love you more than life, too," Sophie replied, snuggling against his strong shoulder. That's how fate gave the two lovers a chance to be happy again. And Elizabeth learned a simple truth. We must not be afraid to love and be loved. Love does not tolerate timidity, because tomorrow may never come. And she also knew that Michael was looking down on her from heaven and blessing her to try to be happy once more.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.